Welcome to the Evolved Caveman, where men learn to be successful and happy with your host, Dr. John Schinnerer, as he shares the most impactful ideas and practices for you to get the most from your relationships, your work, and from your life. Now here's Dr. John.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. John with the latest episode of the Evolved Caveman. And today it's my honor to bring to you Shawn Brown. And Shawn's a friend that I met recently, and I loved Shawn's story because my impression of Shawn is that he is a good epitome of the evolved caveman, that he is highly masculine, good-looking, smart, and one of the things that I loved about him is that right now he's also taking care of his two young daughters, age 3 and almost 1. So let me read you a little bit about Shawn here. Shawn's been in the fitness industry for over 12 years, starting as a personal trainer and becoming a training general manager. The last 5 years, Shawn worked as a fitness coach to individuals with special needs, such as autism and Down syndrome. And as of a couple months ago, as I mentioned, Shawn became a full-time stay-at-home dad for his two daughters. And at the same time, he's embarking on building his own e-commerce business, the Parent Supply Company. So thanks for coming on, Shawn. I appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. That was a great intro.
Oh,
I sound great.
So tell me your origin story, because we talked a little bit about that the first time, and I found that to be really fascinating. You grew up in Philly, so tell me a little bit more about that, or outside of Philly.
Outside of Philly, yeah. So we moved to the suburbs of Philly when I was about 6 or 7, with my mom, raised by a single mom. Dad was in and out of the picture in some things. Don't have the best relationship there, but mom did most of that. And I don't feel like I ever really wanted for anything. I think my mom did a great job. But yeah, that's where we started. If we want to start.
And you grew up, so your dad's a cop in Philly.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, he's retired now.
And you grew up playing football.
I did.
So to me, that's kind of the epitome of that, man box culture.
Right.
You got a dad that's a cop. You've got, you're growing up in football in Philly or outside of Philly. And what was that like growing up for you?
At times it was tough. I mean, I don't know, being a young kid, you don't necessarily always know or understand what some of the expectations are. But, I think we had talked about there's a time that I didn't get a chance to see my dad the one time, and it was like, hey, let's stop crying. My sons aren't crybabies, type thing. So you're kind of expected to be tough, you're kind of expected to just do what needs to be done and suck it up, I guess, really.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of times that, we parents don't know what to do with our kids' emotions. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. It makes us really uncomfortable. Right. So we just want to stop it or shut it down.
Yeah.
Do you do that with your daughters? Like, because what I realized in myself is that I would pick up my children's pain. Like if they were in pain, I would feel that pain. If they were sad, I would pick up the sadness. And when I was a young parent, I had a hard time with that. It made me hurt inside.
I tried my best not to, because I don't want to do that. My goal is to raise strong daughters, and independent, but that's not going to, having a football mentality is not going to work for you. If you want something that's humbling, go ahead and be a big, strong guy that intimidates some people just by looking at them. And then go ahead and try to raise a 3-year-old little girl that tells you no, yes, and I don't want to do that and stuff, because that stuff just doesn't work. Shutting it down doesn't work, and it can just make it worse, really.
Well, and I think, it's a great experience for men to have a daughter or two, because it's a whole different world of interaction, of play, of emotional awareness, of conversation. I mean, I think we touched on this a little bit. I remember I have 2 daughters, 2 sons, and playing with my daughters when they were young was a new experience for me, because I wanted to play as a boy, the way I had always come up playing. She wanted to play as a stereotypical girl. So we would pull out, I think it was Polly Pockets at the time. And she wanted to have conversations between the Polly Pockets. over and over and over. I was like, I could do it for a while, and, we'd have conversations. I'm like, okay, this is how girls play. And, I'd do it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then the little boy in me would get bored and want to, smash the dollhouse and, Hulk rage, and it's just funny how we're different.
Absolutely. Well, my wife will, even if they're upset, my go-to is flip the kid upside down, tickle her, things like that. My wife will sit down and hold her, and I'll hold her, when she's upset, and give her a big hug. But I try to be as cognizant of that as possible, because I don't want to not connect with her. She's 3. She's trying to figure out the world, and she doesn't know what's going on with emotions and this and that. So that's already hard enough for her as it is. I don't need to make her feel bad about having emotions and different things. And, I think a lot of it ends up being the pressures that we put on ourselves too, because half the time you get irritated with your kid with some things. It's like, oh, we got to be somewhere on time, but that's because you care about this. Today, dude, I should have been, here 20 minutes ago, but my youngest napped late. The other ones, I got to chase her around the house to get clothes on. She's running around in underwear all morning. And I'm just like, I'm losing my mind. I'm like, come on, but yelling and just being like, yo, let's go right now. I'm not on the football field. I wasn't a team captain when I was in football, but I called the plays for defense. I'm not standing in front of the huddle and saying, someone starts talking to me like, shut up, let's keep going. We got to get this play out. That doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. So,
and so one of the things I appreciate about you is that you have that ability to shift gears with that awareness. Because a lot of guys that I talk to, I think they try the same strategy at home with their kids that they try in the office or from sports that they used to play. And it's like, well, wait a second, like your child's 5, they're not even a young adult with a somewhat fully functioning prefrontal cortex. Like, we got to use some different tools here. And a lot of them take a great deal of patience and some rethinking of how we came up.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I mean, I don't even know what I do. It's besides patience. You're right. I mean, I just try to not do that, because each situation calls for something different. And again, I try to remember that she's trying to figure out life. And listen, don't let me talk to you like I'm an evolved caveman. I am evolving.
There you go.
I try. I try. And there's times that, you're tired, I didn't even get to drink my cup of coffee on the way here, things like that. And so you're stressed. And so, you revert to that a little bit, but I try my best to not do that, because again, like I said, I don't think it works. And even if it does work, I don't want my daughters to grow up, if they were to marry a man when they're older, like I don't want them to marry a guy that acts like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm the first man and male role model that they see in their life. So for me, that's not okay. We can have a conversation versus, just putting straight demands on, because kids are going to be kids sometimes.
Yeah. And I think the other piece to that I was thinking is it really helps to be aware of your triggers as mom or dad to, like you mentioned one, which is time. Like time's a big trigger for people. Like I know I don't like to be late. Mm-hmm. And if it's just me, that's easy to control.
Right.
If like you, I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, I don't control all that.
Exactly.
And so I've got to let go of that need to be timely at times. I mean, their triggers are, life and limb. If one of your children their safety is threatened, that's a trigger.
Right.
If you're in a car and someone cuts you off and the kids are in the car, that's a trigger.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So being aware of some of these triggers is helpful.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of the time thing, like I said, on the way here, it was, and I kicked myself for doing it. I told my daughter this morning, we're going to go visit mom at work. You're going to have lunch with her. I'm in my wife's office right now. And, so that we can talk without screaming kids in the background. And,
thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on, because this is a break for a few minutes. But, even on the way here, I had to do some breathing, take 6 deep breaths on the way, because like I can't stand being late. For me, even being a few minutes early is being late. I wanted to be here, make sure all the audio set up, because, at any time something could go wrong. You know what I mean? I'm the type of person that'll take note cards and I'll have it on my phone, and I brought the charger for the computer, all that stuff, because I don't want it to fail and I want this to go, right. So taking some deep breaths and trying to, remember and try to, calm down a little bit is something that I try to do as well, because you just need a minute, even if I have to take a minute and give the kid, turn the TV on for a minute for the kid, and for the young one, let her sit for a minute, try to take a deep breath and remember all that stuff, because it's easy to forget when you're trying to get stuff done all day. You get busy and you forget that, like, hey man, you're staying home so you can spend time with your kids. Not everyone in life gets to do that.
Right. And it's a privilege. And the other thing that I realized when I was a young parent is I had to be willing to let go of my agenda often. Mm-hmm. Like, as an adult, you've got this to-do list in your mind for each day and you want to get to that. And I realized that the more I was sticking to that or getting attached to that agenda, the more annoyed I was getting with my kids. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I could let go of some of that and be flexible, the day went much more smoothly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's why I think we talk, when I exercise like that, I have to work out. It's just like, It's a health thing for me. It's a lifestyle thing for me. Makes me feel good. I get up at between 4 and 4:30 a.m. To work out. Today I got up at 5. It was a little later, but I have to get that done before the kids wake up, because I know who knows what the day's going to be like. Who knows, if I'm going to have time to get dinner together, or if I'm going to have time to put the dishes away. But sometimes you got to give for a couple things, because like you said, you don't know. Sometimes. Especially
like sick kids.
Yeah.
Your child with the fever, like, you gotta throw everything out the window.
Yeah, exactly. Or kid having a nightmare.
The other thing you brought up, which is interesting to me, is the deep breathing. And that's one of the foundational skills I'll teach clients when they come in. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'll say is that the breath is the remote control for the brain. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is, you've got the autonomic nervous system running through the spine, the bundle of nerves, and it splits into two systems. One is the sympathetic nervous system. One is the parasympathetic. Mm-hmm. And the sympathetic nervous system is that stress response. It's fight, flight, freeze. Mm-hmm. And everyone that I've talked to in this area is really good at activating that system. We're go, 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 do, got to get this done. And where we fail, where we're not very good, is activating that parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation response, the rest and digest response. And if you think of us as a car, that the sympathetic nervous system is the gas. So we're really good at hitting the gas.
Right.
But we need to practice hitting the brakes, which is that the parasympathetic nervous system. And breathing is the easiest way to do that. So simply by exhaling out longer than you inhale in, that automatically activates the brakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use it a lot anytime I, like I said, start feeling, you start feeling a little jittery. And then you take 6 deep breaths, and I'm counting while I'm doing it. And, I do that. And it works.
Yeah. So one of the things we were talking about before was kind of this idea of working out, lifting, bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. Let's go into that area for a little bit. And one of the things I was mentioning was, I've talked with quite a few amateur bodybuilders.
Right.
Always impressed at their discipline not only at working out, but more so even with their diet. Mm-hmm. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think it takes a lot of willpower, a lot of control to do that, even on the amateur level, because you're trying to become pro and different things, to measure out your food and to eat or not eat, or to be that weird person at dinner where everyone else is ordering pizza and you're getting a salad and water, whatever it fits into your stuff that day. But we also were, talking a little bit about how, when is enough for some guys, right? That kind of gets into, when is being big enough? And it's definitely, I feel like maybe if you're talking evolutionary standards, being a big, alpha male, you talk about things like that. You think of a big, tall, strong guy and this and that, and maybe a little bit of that comes from there. But I think it's also a little bit of insecurity for some people. Now, I'm not calling out bodybuilders or anything like that. I'm not saying that. Because anyone can pick up a weight and work out, right? Like weightlifting and exercising has gotten a lot more popular. It's still not as big as you think it is when you're in the lifting world, but sometimes people are just getting bigger so that because they're scared, people don't want to mess with them, and they don't want people to mess with them. And it's just kind of a shell for some people.
Yeah, I think there's a layer of self-protection to it, of it's armor. So at some level, I think it can keep people away. And, and that's just one of many reasons. And I don't even think it's a conscious reason for many.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, the other thing that comes to mind is, and by the way, I'm all for weightlifting. I've been lifting for 5 or 6 years now, and I love it. And I think it's a great thing that we need to do, particularly as we age, because we need to counter that losing muscle mass, as we get older. But this whole thing interests me as well. I remember when I started out in psychology years ago, I had an assumption that things like body dysmorphic disorders were only female. So, I thought only female, like teenage girls, saw their bodies incorrectly or not as they are. And then I remember I had my first young bodybuilder come in, and he didn't see himself accurately at all. There was a lot of distortion between what I saw and what he saw in the mirror. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of opened my eyes, and I just began looking at it with curiosity, and then spoke with, several young bodybuilders in the gym. And, they would show me photos on Instagram or whatever of them in workout competition or in competition shape. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. Like you look amazing. Like these guys had 12 packs and muscles everywhere. And they'd be like, oh yeah, but look at this. And they'd scroll over to someone else like Mr. Universe or Mr. Olympic and would look at the dude's biceps. So that kind of drove the point home that wherever we're at, I think we have a hard time being satisfied with it. There's always something more, something something to get bigger. And so it made me realize that all of us, I think, over-focus on the parts of our body where we're most dissatisfied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I feel like part of it is some people don't know how big they really are until they're compared to other people. Mm-hmm. You get used to certain things. And my wife, someone has said this to my wife, like my wife doesn't think that I'm that big, but I'm 6'1", almost 230. Like that's a lot bigger than the average male. Until you see me standing next to someone else, and then you're like, oh shit, yeah, he is. You are taller, you are bigger. And even from eye to eye, when I see people, feel like that. But I think it's also, you mentioned Instagram, and I think social media is a great tool for connecting. We connected on social media, but I think that there's a lot of uneducation about some of the things, especially with bodybuilding, or fitness in general. Everyone sees these people with these 15 packs and, I'm on Instagram and this and that, but they don't know that, this person has been training for that for 12 weeks just to do that one photo shoot. So even, and these guys are pro, like they're working out 2 or 3 times a day. They eat 6-7 times a day. That's all they're doing. That's their job. So sometimes it's the comparing yourself to someone who's a pro is almost like being a high school player or even maybe a college player to comparing yourself to an NFL player, right? Like they're just a level up of you. But the thing is a lot of times people think that's the norm, but it's not. Mr. Olympia, the winners of Mr. Olympia is not the norm. Dana Lynn Bailey won, Miss Olympia 2-3 times or something like that. And she's not like the norm. That's her job. That's what she was doing all the time. Her life revolves around that. So I think that's part of it as well, is you start getting this, like, I'm big, but I'm not big enough. Or you look in the mirror and you're like, I got to fix this or that. But like, you look fantastic. But, and so I think that merging the two together is where some of that comes from.
So let me ask you a question, because so I've thought about this quite a bit. And so I'm trying to keep that. So we have a negativity bias in our mind, which means we over-focus on negative emotions, negative beliefs, negative self-definitions. I'm an idiot, or negative things we think people think about us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true when we look at our body as well. And so one of the things I've tried to counteract that is to have my own goal. And my own goal is something like, I want to be in the top 10% in my gym for guys in my age group. Mm-hmm. And if I'm there, then I'm like, okay, cool. I'm happy with that. Do you have anything like that to help keep you grounded in this area?
Not really. Well, I work out for life. So I don't necessarily do it for a goal like that. I'm always trying to beat myself. Like, I keep a record of my logs, and I don't care if I do one extra rep or I put a couple extra pounds on, or, whatever it is, and I'm trying to do that. And I've talking to a friend, and we've kicked around the idea of actually getting on stage and competing at some point soon. But so that's a little bit kind of in my head, but I like to work out for functionality, to be able to run around with my kids, to be able to, pick up something and not throw my back out, and, all of that stuff. So I don't necessarily have a specific goal like that. But I actually think, now that you mention it, that's not a bad idea, because if you don't know what you're trying to do, then sometimes it's easy to falter from that, or are you overdoing it for no reason?
When, it's interesting to me, like when I started working out, it was after my divorce, and I was like, okay, I want to get a little bit stronger, right? I want to look better.
Right.
And I also knew that as I got older, I was going to lose muscle mass.
Right.
And so I had never lifted weights. Like, I'd played sports my whole life, but I'd kind of squirmed out of lifting weights, partly because I was embarrassed.
Okay.
Back to high school, I wasn't a big guy.
Right.
And so I was like, it comes to me being 45 years old, I'm still kind of embarrassed to go to the gym.
Right.
So I actually got a weight bench that I put in my garage and worked out with that for like 6 months before I could even kind of face my own embarrassment. Like, okay, I'm strong enough to go to the gym now.
Right.
But I realized that I was comparing myself to guys that were in their 20s.
Right.
It's not a fair comparison.
Or even guys the same age that have been doing it for, you're talking about 45. Dude, I've been working out for 19 years, about 19 years going on ago is when I picked up my first weight. So when I walk into a gym, I'm completely comfortable. I've been in the gym my whole life, almost, like more than half of my life. And I understand it's for football, but it's like you said, having realistic comparisons. Like, I'm cool with goals, and I'm cool with a goal that might seem a little bit of a stretch for you, but it's got to be realistic. Like, you're not going to be in the same shape as a 20-year-old whose testosterone levels are higher than anyone can get with anything, without shooting anything. Like, these guys are just like higher
than my levels were ever. But
yeah, like, that's just how it is. So, I think it's a little more realistic type thing. Like, and I don't remember her name right now, but one of the people that I follow on Instagram, I happened to be scrolling through and I hit search. It was someone in the CrossFit world. I forget her name, but she had 2 pictures of herself. One like 2 or 3 weeks right before the games, these past games, and like one like a week or 2 after. And she's like, "Listen, I'm not saying that the 3 week before is healthy." She's like, I don't stay like this all year long. Like, this is what I look like most of the time. Like, I like things like that because it's like, I can attain this and this is achievable, but this is more realistic. And this is what I look like most of the time. And I think people don't realize that. What's
sustainable over long term? So I like your approach of like working out as a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. The other thing that I was curious about is, you mentioned kind of functionality and like not wanting to throw your back out when you pick up your daughter or something heavy. Right. Have you focused more as you've gotten older on things like, I don't know, stretching, Pilates, yoga, anything that's more, because what I realized is that I could get stronger, but I also needed to focus on flexibility because I was not flexible.
Yeah. Well, so the functionality thing was also, I have a background in security too. I didn't put that on there, but I used to do executive protection. So, on the residential security team and the executive team. So you never know if and I used to do martial arts and stuff. So when you're wrestling around with people, and that's what I mean functionality wise, me doing a bunch of bicep curls isn't going to necessarily help me, body slam someone if we have to. But so that I try to transfer that over into life in general. But as I got older and getting older, yes, I stretch every day. And even if it's not like a weightlifting day, I do like a quick 5 minutes. I try to do a movement. I try to move. So like I've tried to shift. Like I still do my, powerlifting, all that stuff, and everything, and lifting heavy or whatever cycle I'm working through that time. But I try to move, and like that's how I view my working out now. Is like I try to do some animal movements, some whatever it is, just to crawl around and stuff that we used to do as a kid. And that's also from watching my kids. It's like my daughter can crawl across a floor, like a bear crawl across the floor, like it's nothing, and she's like not even out of breath. And my almost 1-year-old can squat down all the way, touch her ass to the ground, and stand right back up because she's got the mobility to do that. And so as I've gotten older, I incorporate more of that. I incorporate more stretching, and I incorporate. I used to do yoga when I don't have the time right now, but on like my off days, I would do. I would try to do like a 20-minute, 30-minute yoga to warm up and stretch on that. And that was just really getting over the whole, like, I'm going to just do bodybuilding only and type thing. Like, I feel like if you pull from different places from, bodybuilding, a little bit of maybe CrossFit, a little bit of powerlifting, a little bit of yoga, and you can become, this could be sustainable for life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I've got a friend that's an MBA from Harvard that goes around the country and consults with hospitals and doctors. And he's probably 68 now, but about 10, 15 years ago, he was curious about this. And he started asking doctors around the country who are fit and older, what have you done to stay in shape? And consistently the answer was yoga. And 15 years ago, I was like, like I'd never thought about doing yoga prior to that.
Dude, yoga's no joke, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like it's the core strength and the flexibility. I start sweating like 5 minutes into a yoga workout, and you're like looking over, like, well, what's wrong with you? But and I do it at home. See, like for you, it was the gym. I've never gone to a yoga studio. You're not going to see. I don't think you're going to see me at a yoga studio anytime soon. Maybe. I would love to do hot yoga at a studio.
Oh, are you kidding? Oh, I couldn't do that. Bikram yoga. But as far as time-wise, I just don't have that right now with the kids. So I have a gym in the basement, and I do some stuff on YouTube if I get a chance. But for me, I think it's just a balance of everything, and that's kind of how I try to try to look at everything with life. Like I try to play hard with my kids and roll around and do that stuff like a guy, like a boy. Like that's how I like to play. But I also need to be able to be there and be sensitive when my daughter needs me to be sensitive and hold her and hug her and this and that. And so it's the same thing. I want to be able to lift weights, but I don't want to stop lifting weights because I did something stupid that I could have prevented if I had a little more flexibility. And I feel better. I feel like overall I do. So once you get over that whole stigma of, oh, you're doing yoga, I remember when NFL players started doing ballet. Emmitt Smith, right? People would be like, oh, he's doing ballet, blah, 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 blah. But he was onto something way back then. It's movement, it's flexibility, it's balance.
Yeah, exactly.
And and the other thing that was interesting, I remember when baseball players several years ago started doing mindfulness, and like, oh wow, like, and that makes complete sense to me. If you're on the mound as a pitcher, you want to know what's going on internally. You want to know when you're getting triggered. You want to be able to be aware first so you can bring yourself down if you need to, or titrate your arousal level to so it's where you need it to be, whether you need more energy or less energy.
Yep.
That makes complete sense. If you are not aware of what's going on internally, you have no prayer of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of my high school football coach, my head football coach up until my junior year, used to do this with us. And that's actually why I do the breathing now. But we used to, after doing plyometrics over the summer and this and that, we would lay on the floor, turn the lights off, and then we would cool down, right? And we would do deep breathing, right? And we'd go through and we'd clench each muscle and let it relax so you can feel the difference of being, ready to go and relax, right? And then you relax. And then we'd be breathing. And then we would be thinking about the game that's coming up. And like, not just like, oh, or we're going to win the game. It's like, okay, what does it smell like? What do you, what do the jerseys look like? What are you going to do on this play? And like, you're playing it in your mind and now that's a big thing for athletes and everything, but I try to do that with a lot of things. All that mindfulness helps with everything because it also reduces your anxiety. So it helps you be, for me, when I played football, like I didn't try to go out there and just be spastic and like, oh, we're just going to go kill them. And then like I blow all my energy in the first 3 plays of the game. Like we got another, 4 quarters of ball to play. So controlling it was how I like to be. And that helped me a lot. And I feel like that's what I try to do as well now.
Yeah, so you're talking about progressive muscle relaxation. That's the progressive tightening and relaxing of muscles. And then visualization, which visualization fascinates the hell out of me because when I was at Berkeley, it was all about sort of what's proven in research. And I had to have a bridge to get to visualization to be able to share that with clients and athletes at times. And, we've known since the 1950s that visualization helps your performance athletically. It started out in slalom skiing, but, now we've taken it to whole new places. And I love playing around with visualization for athletes, but even for executives. And so I think that idea of just, laying down and visualizing like the meeting to come or the game to come, again, and I think you hit on a key point that relaxing that anxiety that you feel, that stress that you feel, making yourself more comfortable or be able to relax into the situation is a great way to go.
Yeah. It's like you said, do you need to be more amped up? Do you need to bring it down a notch? Do you need to... So, if you need to be more amped up, well, you're already anxious as it is. And really, your body can't tell the difference of that until if you tell yourself that you're excited and not anxious, it's the same, process throughout the body, right? So the increased heart rate and you're starting to sweat and all that stuff. And you can use that to your advantage. And so, I think that's a big thing. And I think
it's funny. I've done anger management with high school and college football players, and inevitably they'll come in, especially if they're on defense, and they'll be like, "I need my anger. Like, don't take my anger away. I need it." Like, I couldn't take it away from you if I tried, nor do we want to, because you need anger, especially if you're on the defensive side of the ball. Like that's that seek and destroy mentality. That's I'm going to eliminate any obstacle between me and the ball, and then I'm going to blow up the ball. But you need to be able to try to titrate that anger to kind of adjust it up or down when you get off the field.
Exactly. And
even when you're on the field, like if you think of anger on a 1 to 10 scale in terms of intensity, from calm to incredible Hulk enraged, I would argue you don't want to be at a 8, 9, or 10 on that scale to play defense effectively. You want to be angry. You want to be sort of moderately angry. You don't want to be out of control, enraged, like hitting the quarterback when he's in the huddle. There's limits, I think, to anger being effective in terms of how intense it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Incredible Hulk, but so if you've seen the movies, like when he's Incredible Hulk, when he's done being Incredible Hulk, the dude is like wiped out. He's like, I'm tired from doing that. And that it's the same thing in real life. Like your anger consumes a lot of energy, but if you're it consumes a lot of your brain, right? If we're going to start talking the primal brain versus this and that, we can do that too. But you're not thinking as much. And I realize you're doing a lot of reacting after, on a football field. But like you said, dude, you got to focus on this play. Then you're going to take a break. Then you're going to focus on this play. And you're going to take a break. So being able to not only have that anger, but bring it up again when you need it. If you blow your load that quick, it's not going to work. You're going to be done. You're going to be shot. So I think the control of that is key.
So there's one other area that I wanted to touch on, because this really impressed the hell out of me when we first spoke. And by the way, for those listening, when we first spoke, I kind of immediately fell in love with Shawn because he's got 2 little girls, his daughters, running around the house, and one of whom he's kind of, hanging over his shoulder and kind of balancing as she's trying to, grab his beard. And it was hilarious and very endearing. So tell us a little bit about the work with special needs people that you did, because that touched me as well. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it touched me too when I first went. So my background, like I said, fitness industry, personal training, I've done that for years. And I've had all the clients that are, I'm getting ready for a wedding in 3 months, got to lose a bunch of weight, or I want to get stronger and this and that. But I was introduced to a guy that was working with individuals with special needs, and I show up, and it was one of the best things I've ever seen. I've always liked to work out and help people, work out and exercise and be healthy. But when we were working on a kid alternating his feet, walking down the steps, up and down the steps, I was like, oh, okay. And we were working on a kid even catching a ball, and all of that stuff, like down to the basics of stuff that we take for granted day in and day out. It hits you right in the feels. Like I was hooked right then and there, because not only is it fulfilling helping out those individuals, building a relationship with them, they're some of the coolest people I've ever met. They just don't necessarily express it in the same way that we can. I have there's a guy that I worked with for almost 5 years, and, he's nonverbal. And I remember talking to his mom, and she was talking about him having a meltdown at some point. And I was like, he expresses his emotions different. Like, it's no big deal, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about. And it's touching to do that and to be a part of their, I'm actually happier that I was a part of their lives than, and I know they feel that they got to do some cool things and everything, gyms and stuff, but I feel like I'm more touched being part of their lives and getting to do that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that hits me very powerfully is the fact that I gain a lot of perspective. To your point of, it reminds you of what we take for granted. So we take for granted so much of what our body can do with relative ease, walking, feeding ourselves with a fork, dressing ourselves, driving a car, holding your daughter. All those things are things that they're so easy to take for granted. Right. And yet with reminders, and I think with practicing daily gratitude, bring that back to your awareness of, I am so thankful for what my legs do for me. I am so thankful for the ability to grab a pen and write. The more you can remind yourself of these little things that we've kind of just we've taken for granted.
Well, they're always,
better off we are.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's right. I was just saying, the better off we are. I think the more we can remind ourselves of these things to be grateful for, we're better off. Yeah.
It's the one kid that I'm thinking of in specific, and a lot of the other kids, actually, they're overlooked with what they can and can't do. So instead of them being able to participate in gym class like everyone else, and I know that it takes a little bit more work sometimes, like there's things, it might be basketball season and they're rolling a ball back and forth on the floor instead of trying to bounce and dribble a ball, and I've had this kid, doing med ball slams with a 6-pound medicine ball. There's no basketball that's that heavy. So they're capable of doing it. But part of it is figuring out why they aren't doing it. And I try to take lessons that I learned from there. And some of it is just that they are too tired to do it. Like, he doesn't have enough physical strength or endurance to actually do it. So instead of trying to do it, they just stop. And like, I try to apply that to, my daughter. She doesn't, she's all excited to come see mom. She doesn't know what time is. She doesn't have time constraints on our way here. So she's like trying to process this crazy excited emotion, which is making me late and everything, but she doesn't know why she's doing it. And so it's the same type of thing, like, or at least that's one of the lessons that I have taken from working with that kid, some kiddos like that. They're not participating because they physically can't. So instead of trying, they're just, kind of, they're going to give up. But you get them a little stronger and they start participating more. Or you get, texts and things from their mom about, hey, my kid, is all excited because they can cut an apple on their own. They have the hand strength to do it now. So when you get things like that, it catches you off guard, because like, if I want to cut an apple, I'm going to cut an apple. Like, I've never thought about having to cut an apple, but it puts a lot into perspective when you think of things like that.
Yeah. It's funny. One of the exercises I'll run clients through is gratitude. And to me, there's 3 layers of gratitude. So one is gratitude for obvious stuff. You're grateful for your daughters, you're grateful for your wife, you're grateful for your house, you're grateful for your health, that kind of stuff. The second layer is gratitude for less obvious things, kind of what we were just talking about, my ability to walk on my own, dress myself, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And the third layer is gratitude for your biggest challenges in life. And that one takes a little bit of practice, but, for me, it was things like, I'm grateful for my divorce, mm-hmm. because it really drove home the point of mastering emotional management. Mm-hmm. It really drove home the point of mastering my own anger. It really drove home the point of I wasn't happy when I was married. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's things like that you can flip your biggest challenges. And, again, a daily practice of gratitude is one of the foundations of a happier life.
Right.
So I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And along those lines, it was interesting. So back when I was in my early 20s, I volunteered to coach a Special Olympics team. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of nervous about it because I didn't have any experience with that group of people. And they were developmentally delayed. They were about 18 to 21. And I remember being kind of nervous when I went there. And I think we first played volleyball, and then, we do softball and track and field and things. Mm-hmm. And over time, I realized, wow, these 95% of this team is genuinely happy the vast majority of the time. Yep. And I remember looking at myself thinking, wait, I did it all right. I went to the best schools. I got good grades. How come I'm still kind of miserable and they're happy? Yeah. And it was my first inkling that maybe intelligence wasn't all it was cracked up to be, that maybe intelligence can actually make us more miserable. And there's some fledgling research that kind of points to that because of the negativity bias that, the smarter you are, the more layers of thought you have, the faster the thoughts, and the more negative thoughts you have. So it can be connected to misery. And so that was a point in my life where I was like, maybe it's not all about intelligence. Maybe I need to focus more on emotional intelligence and interpersonal intelligence to find ways to be more satisfied and to be happier.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, one of the questions if we were going to get time to talk about that you wrote is the definition of success and being happy and everything. And
yeah.
I feel like, I was thinking about that question. And so some people are going to say, oh, you're just a stay-at-home dad and your wife makes the money now, you're less of a man type thing. And okay, that's fine, whatever. But I'm happy because I get to be in my kid's life all the time. I didn't have that when I was younger. And to be fortunate enough to do that, that's something that makes me happy. But I feel like what you're saying, the intelligent level, I feel like sometimes you're too intelligent because you're like, well, I'm so intelligent, I should be doing this, and I should be more successful in this, and that. And it's not just societal constraints that you're putting on yourself. I should be at this level or whatever it is. So, you hear it all the time. People say, I want to be a millionaire and this and that. But do you really want to be a millionaire? Because to be a millionaire, certain things you have to give up certain things, mm-hmm. right? And so, or I want to be in shape and I want to have a six pack. Okay, cool. But that means you have to put down that cupcake probably, and those people, they're just happy because they're like, cool, this is what we do. I want to do this. This is what I do. And so they have a good time, and they don't when the kid's having a meltdown, he could care less who's around. Doesn't matter if he's at the store, if he's at home. If he's having a meltdown, he's having a meltdown. He's like, whatever. I got some stuff to work out. And whether they're special needs kids or whether they're my daughter, going onto an airplane to fly somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, I'm proud of you for being a stay-at-home dad. I think it's a huge gift to you and especially your daughters. And it lasts about that long. It lasts for a minute in the big picture. You might be a stay-at-home dad for, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but they grow up, and at a certain point they don't need you as much. And that's what I've seen in my own kids, that they need you a lot right now, and they need you a lot through elementary school. And then they get to middle school and they're kind of like, I'm good, and their friends become more important. And then in high school, even more so. So your most intense time as a parent is right now through elementary school. Right. And I think it's a huge gift to them, for you or your wife. I mean, one of you to be there with them the majority of the time. Well,
yeah. I mean, it's what's best for my family. And so that's mm-hmm. one of the things that I feel like, as an evolving caveman, that I could do was what's best for my family, regardless of what it might seem to look like to the outside world, to other people. Like, that doesn't bother me, because the time is short. I try to remember, and I was complaining to a parent one time about my one daughter, like, oh, I still have to hold her for naps. I can't put her down. She wakes up. And she literally just turns and looks at me. Her daughter was 16 at the time. She turns and looks at me and goes, there's going to come a time that you wish just holding your daughter would solve all her problems. And I was like, well, shit, you're right. All right.
Or, there was a time there's going to come a time where you're going to wish you could just hold your daughter.
Yeah.
And she's like, Dad, no.
Yeah, leave me alone. Yeah. So
and so it goes fast.
Yeah, it's been going fast. My youngest is a year already. I have no idea what I've been doing for the last year. So, but I try to remember that. And so that I actually, I'm not gonna lie, it's the hardest thing that I've ever done. Like I've done different jobs, but it's literally the hardest thing that I've ever done, being a stay-at-home dad. But it is, I do, all day you're like, oh, we're just trying to get to bedtime. Then after bedtime, you're like, the kids said this today, and the kids, you're like, it's some of the stuff is funny to see them growing. So yeah, that's why, that's why I read books, 5 love languages of children. I try to listen to podcasts, and follow you on Instagram, different things like that, to try to grow them into the best human being that they can be. But I feel like one of the best things I've heard about that was actually Will Smith put it up about his daughter a while ago, and was saying he's a gardener. Like, she's already a seed. She already has what she needs to become a flower. You just need to water and help her grow and let her be and guide it. And that's what I'm trying to do, to learn. So that's why, I can't be an overly dominant, gorilla. It's not going to help, and I'm also not going to be too sensitive. That's just not me. I'm more sensitive probably with some things, but, having that yin and yang balance with life, and I feel like that's what success and happiness is for me, is the balance of life and whatever it is. If your goal is to be a millionaire, cool. But, I don't want to make $1 million a year and my wife's banging someone else because I'm not paying attention to
Exactly.
it. Right. Or my kids hate me, or I'm just buying my kids things. So I'd rather make $200,000 and be able to go to all their games when they're and do all that stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap things up. Shawn, thanks so much. I greatly enjoyed this conversation. I really, I know I have a lot of admiration and respect for what you're doing. I stayed home for a couple of years with my kids, and I think it is a little bit trying at times if you get wrapped up in what others think or what you think they think. And so just want to give you a shout out and say, hey, you're doing a great job.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
So let me wrap up by just sharing, where can people get a hold of you? Where can people find out more about your e-commerce company? Oh,
it's everything is at The Parent Supply Company. So we're on Facebook at The Parent Supply Company. We're on Instagram at The Parent Supply Company. Twitter is at The Parent Supply Co. And there's always, the email, theparentsupplycompany.com. So, theparentsupplycompany@gmail.com.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, let's stay in touch moving forward. I would like that.
I agree. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming along. And that is it for this episode of The Evolved Caveman.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Evolved Caveman podcast. If you like what you've heard, support us by subscribing, leaving reviews, and sharing the podcast with friends and colleagues. For the latest, most powerful tools to connect with like-minded men, join the Facebook group at The Evolved Caveman. Follow Dr. John on Instagram at The Evolved Caveman, all one word, or join the email list by visiting guidetoself.com.